Good morning and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is going to be another look into the Castle Keeper's Guide, Chapter 4, NPCs, very specifically adherents of NPCs, and this is episode 11 of an ongoing series on castles and crusades. So let me get into a little bit more an explanation of what I'm looking to do with these next couple of videos and why I'm going to spend probably 4 videos just on the NPCs chapter of the Castle Keeper's Guide. NPCs are probably the second most important delivery system of social interaction in any RPG. So what I mean by that is that the most important is obviously the social interaction that is taking place at the gaming table amongst the players, the game master plus the players at the table, and how well they are working together in order to create a fun and welcoming environment at the gaming table. So that's the most important social interaction that's taking place. Now, another way that they demonstrate that is the relationship between player characters and within an adventuring party. So how those player characters interact with one another, and then the interaction between the game master and those player characters, how they're interacting overall within the game world, is then deeply impacted by the second most important social interaction that takes place, and that is with NPCs. And so in order for there to be a sense that it is a living and breathing world that the adventure party is functioning through, the game master has to breathe life into the NPCs of the game world. And so that is what I am going to be focusing on over the next 3 or 4 videos as I break down how Castles and Crusades looks at NPCs, how it actually divides them up into different categories, and then the various levels of interaction that take place both mechanically and as well as in suggestions of how to role play this out and how to make them work within the overall system that you're trying to create at your table. And that is a system devised to make sure that everyone at the table is having a fun gaming experience through the growth of those social interactions that they're having as players, as player characters, and as participants in, a heroic fantasy within the game world as well, or at least as important players in the evolution of the game world, so that their actions have meaning, and their actions can't have meaning unless there are NPCs that they can see that reflected in as they're going through their adventures. So before I move on to that, I'd just like to have you take a close look at the picture that is on the screen. All right, so as you can see here, there's a variety of different types of NPCs that you see, and if you look really, really close, you can start to see some interesting things, right? So You have sitting on the throne, obviously, is is the person in charge, right? So here's a man. He's wearing chainmail armor. He has a woman sitting next to him as well. Um, you can tell a bit about like how lazily she is sitting. How he is sitting somewhat comfortably, but he still seems to be a little bit more alert as to what is going on. You have these guards that are sitting beside the two of them. Um, then you come to these tables, right? You have a court jester that is playing around, and he's singing and looks like he's juggling. You have a bard that is sitting here. You have a man. Obviously, this man is of noble birth, and that is shown by the fact of how he is dressed and the fact that he has a falcon, a hooded falcon, sitting on his lap. Here you have a server who is carving up the meat. You have some kind of normal looking dressed individuals, although this man is obviously wearing armor, so perhaps he is a knight. On the other side, you have serving ladies who are serving up food and drink. You have a man here that's dressed not in armor, but fairly fairly well dressed in comparison to some of the others. You have this man here, all right, also he's wearing a helmet. He's most likely wearing armor underneath his blue shirt here, and you can see that he is intently looking at whomever is entering in to this space. Then you have this couple here, or this woman and this gentleman, and now you notice something if you look very closely, that she is lifting the purse off of this guy here. So she's a thief, stealing his coin purse as he is probably busy either in conversation or in eating. So all of this you have going on in this, and you're seeing various different types of NPCs going about their business. I forgot to mention there's a man over here playing a flute. So there's quite a bit going on in this, and a careful look, you can start to see how each of these individuals are playing a role in the scene. So let's get to the book now. So we have Chapter 4, Non-Player Characters and NPCs Defined. So here I'm just going to jump right to the NPC is an essential part of any Castles and Crusades game, as the characters encounter them in almost every session. NPCs play a variety of roles, from the barkeep at the tavern that passes on juicy rumors for a few coins, to the well-paid henchman that drags the wounded character to safety and healing. The NPC is a multifaceted tool a castle keeper can use in almost limitless number of circumstances. NPCs can start games by supplying the player characters with where, why, and what of an adventure. They can advance stalled adventures by supplying information to confused characters. They can heal wounded characters, can attack them, can either serve them or lord over them. NPCs serve as the catalyst for plot points, awarding characters for success or punishing them for misdeeds. There is almost no end to the utility of NPCs so long as the castle keeper understands the value of the tool at hand. And so they go on to, talk about various different types of NPCs, and I am going to focus for this video on the adherent. They go on to continue. The chapter deals with non-player characters. Below, the general rules and guidelines for the creation and use of NPCs, including the types of NPCs, their reactions, and their loyalty. All right, so they basically go on to what is the basis for what this chapter is going to do. Class-based NPCs. Class-based NPCs possess the same ability as characters. Castle keepers create them using one of the 13 classes from the player's handbook. There's also 13 subclasses in the adventurer's backpack. All right. The multi-class rules and the class and a half rules, or any other variant of dual classes the castle keeper permits in their game. So generally speaking, named and classed NPCs are created exactly the same way as player characters are done. All right. Non-class based NPCs. The list of non-class based NPCs is extensive and includes any NPC not based on a class. Hirelings are the most notable of these, but these also include adherents and creatures. These NPCs generally play only a minor role in the game, but sometimes can be more significant, such as a familiar. The tyranny of rules, and they go into why, rules, you function on rulings rather than rules. So the tyranny of rules has been mentioned innumerable times before. The pace and the mood of the game can be shattered by strict adherence to rules, tables, charts, and the like. All right, so any of the rules and charts that you're using in here, if they get in the way of what you're hoping occurs, or what you're looking to achieve in your game session, you can obviously alter them. You could re-roll on a table if something didn't come up correctly, or come up as you hoped, or you can just create the NPCs that you're looking to create without actually rolling on a chart. Make them different. I want to focus on that. Some NPCs are cowards and others are heroes. Some are candlestick makers, some are innkeepers, and some are none of the above. Be sure to play each NPC true to their own ends and desires. Make each more than a one-dimensional cookie-cutter character, and everyone will derive more enjoyment from the experience of interacting with them. They mentioned somewhere in here, if your world has 12 barkeepers named Otto, you have to change it up a little bit. You have to diversify what these mundane characters are named, and what they look like and how they behave and everything, because that leads to the world becoming very stale, and it leads to the players responding through their characters in a way where they're very dismissive. They might not even notice characters that you have spent time investing, personalities and differences to. They'll just blow that off and just go with what they perceive is going to be the stereotype that you create. So avoid creating stereotypes in your world. The power of clarity. NPCs' interactions can be terribly difficult and complicated. Months of game time, character, PC, and NPC interactions can build up detailed histories that need tracking from one game to the next. And they're talking about sessions. Castle keepers should use the descriptions and the tables below to help govern these interactions. In Castles and Crusades, there are 4 types of NPCs: adherents, henchmen, hirelings, and monsters, or creatures. Each one of Each one is described on the following pages. The CK runs the majority of NPCs, the henchmen being the possible exception, as they may decide to allow a player character to play henchmen. Different parameters govern each of the different types of NPCs, as explained below. Adherents. So this is where the video is going to focus on. Adherents created and played entirely by the castle keeper. Adherents are the everyday people the characters encounter. The list of adherents is inexhaustible. I have actually counted them up, and there's 102 different types of adherents here. And again, you can utilize all of them. You can add to this list. You can subtract from this list. It's entirely up to you. But include the following: priests of orders, commoners, soldiers, barkeepers, guardsmen, and so on and so on and so on. Cobblers and seamstresses and tailors and armor smiths, weaponsmiths, blacksmiths, and so on and so on and so on. Creating an adherent. So adherents don't have primary attributes like a PC does, or a classed NPC does. So adherents do not generally receive primary and secondary attributes at all. If a CK wishes to give them primary attributes, then they may do so at their own discretion. To do so, following the rules outlined for monsters in Monsters and Treasure under saves, allowing them mental and physical attribute categories only. All right, so you might only just create a mental attribute score and a physical attribute score for the purposes of using saving throws against those particular characters. Hit dice generally adhere to either 4 HD, a D4 for HD, or a D6. Even a D8 depending on the circumstances. So there's a different expression here for the HD is the hit die type, not the hit die number. All right, so the hit die type is either a D4, a D6 on occasion, and rarely a D8, but D8s will most likely be guards and that kind of thing. Those with more physical makeup. You could have a blacksmith with a D8 for for hit points rather than a D4. A farmer might be a D6, and a shopkeeper might be a D4. So there can be a variety of different variants that you use. Going on, alignments, they almost always should be neutral unless the adventure or the scenario calls for something different. Weapons, they should normally not have any weapons, or certainly not any weapon ability, with the exception of perhaps guards. Armor, unless they're class-based, the adherent cannot wear armor or any other type unless the CK specifically allows it. Again, guards. Anyone else shouldn't be wearing armor. If you're going to have the NPC as a former adventurer, which is a very common thing to do, then obviously you're going to roll them up as an adventurer, give them whatever purposes is the reason behind them no longer adventuring, and then apply that to the character when you roll it up. Their abilities are generally not going to exceed anything that their type is, and but if you do want to give them additional abilities, then you're not creating so much an adherent, but a hireling perhaps, and so they're specifically talking about adherence. So now I'm going to take a look at this chart real quick, and I'm going to go to an alchemist. All right, just very, very quickly, an alchemist. So we have an alchemist here. The challenge base is 18. In other words, a challenge base is used when you're trying to determine if an alchemist is in the location. And you'd roll a d20, and if you roll on an 18 or higher, that means that an alchemist is present there. And then there will be modifications to that roll based on the type of community the adventure party has entered. So I'm going to keep on with an alchemist, and an alchemist costs 2 gold pieces per day without food or lodging. So if you are asking an alchemist to produce something specifically for you, and I'll get to the chart that talks about that, it's going to be at a cost of 2 gold pieces per day, plus the item that they're creating for you, plus the ingredients cost that might be involved as well. So let's continue with alchemist as our example. We come through here, and there's additional all the way through the list, and then there's an explanation of every type of the 102 examples that they have here. So we get to developing adherence. So this is on page 71. So we started on page, I wanted to make this point here, and you can see how much time they're going to spend. We started on page 63, and now we're up to page 71, and we start talking about developing adherence. So there are transient adherents, and then there are permanent adherents. Transient are kind of those background characters that you don't really have to flesh them out very much. And if the players, for whatever reason, have their characters specifically interact with a transient adherent, then you flesh them out beyond just a name and what their profession is, and that's basically it. You want to talk to the blacksmith, the head blacksmith, not his little assistants that are working in the background. The assistants are transient, and the blacksmith, him or herself, is the permanent adherent. So a permanent adherent requires more time and development, a name, some background information, a personality, help augment the continual encounters characters are likely to have with this type of an adherent. So let's say your character player party moves into a particular town, and they're going to use this town as a hub for several days, several weeks, even several months. Then there are key adherents throughout that town that you are going to have to flesh out, and because they are going to interact with them frequently, and they might actually become important sources of information. They'll be a source for repairing their equipment or providing them with new equipment if necessary, and so on. So you're going to want to flesh them out. And they go through and they detail how you go about doing that. All right, and here they actually mention, here is a retired 14th level lawful good human paladin with many campaigns under his belt. That's the kind of thing that you often see dungeon masters or game masters, or in this case, gatekeepers, castle keepers, using, is Freudian slip. Castle keepers using to make these characters really kind of stand out more so. They're still NPCs. They're probably not going to adventure with the player party unless they're specifically designed to do that. But it gives them more of a background, more something of interest for the player characters to interact with. Locating adherents. Remember I mentioned the 18 base chance for encountering an alchemist. So now we're going to go into locating adherents. So based on the size of the community, you are going to add a challenge level to that base challenge. So in a Thorpe, population of 50 people, the challenge level is an 8 to find any adherent you're searching for. So that outcome is 18. 18 plus 8 means that on a d20, the player characters searching for an alchemist in the Thorpe, they are going to have to roll, obviously, a modified 26 in order to find an alchemist in a Thorpe. They would need a 22 in a hamlet. They would need a 20 in a village. They would need a 12 in a town. They would only need an 8 in a city, and they would automatically find one in a metropolis. All right, so you can start to see, like in most places, a town is going to be someplace where they're going to find what they're looking for, because they only need to roll a 12 out of, on a d20, and a lot of times they have modifiers. The player characters might have modifiers for making those searches, but even if they don't, they always add their level, so they would at least have their level modifier attached to these things as well. Hiring adherents. So now you've found the alchemist that you're looking for. All right. Well, how good is he? And we can start taking a look here at the table, and it deals with his skill proficiency. It will say how skilled he is, and then what the cost for the employee or the item is. So a professional alchemist, remember it was 2 gold pieces a day. Well, he is going to be 5 times that amount. He's going to be 10 gold pieces a day in order to hire him, all right, because he is proficient. I would also argue that based on the size is the maximum level that you might find in there. So a Thorpe might only have a proficient. A hamlet might have a proficient or possibly a specialist. A village, a professional or below. A town, an expert or below. A city, a master or below. And then a metropolis would have someone of unequaled ability or below. All right, and so you can interpose these. Now, is that what they say to do? No. But that is where the castle keeper has some discretion of how to use these charts and combine them up. There's an impact on construction time. And looking at the type of skill that they're having, and then the type of item that you're looking to construct will modify this table, right? So creating something that is routine is a 2d4. 2d4 what in relation? Well, it depends on what you're having them create. So light armor, including shields, takes days. So 2d4 for a regular piece of armor, 2d4 days in order to create that. If you go to medium armor, well, that takes weeks. So a plain, mundane piece of medium armor might take 2 to 4 weeks to create. Now, if that armor, the person wants inlay and all kinds of decorations applied to it, now that's a little bit more complex, so it might take 2d6 weeks in order to create that. If they want it made of rare items and materials and everything, but it is still medium armor, well, that is more difficult to do, and so it might take 2d4 plus 4 in weeks in order to create that. And then very difficult is making something that is eventually going to be enchanted to make a magic item out of it. And so it is going to be 2d6 plus 4. And you can get into really long things. So let's go back to our alchemist items. Alchemist items take days, weeks, castle keeper's choice, right? So if it's a fairly mundane potion, let's say a cure light wounds potion, a healing potion, then it might only take days. If it's something that needs really complex materials in order to make, that would then take possibly weeks, and you go according to how complex it is and such. So more tables to take a look at and use. Notice that some of these are not randomized tables. Some of these are just modifiers to the random tables. We deal with hiring magical services and divine services, arcane services, calculating the costs. So typically to have a single spell base price, so a caster level 1 is casting a first level spell. Let's say it is divine, only costs 50 gold pieces. If you're having them cast an arcane base spell, it's going to be 100 gold pieces for a level 1 casting level. All right, so a level 1 spell, 50 or 100. The caster level is going to increase the cost as well. All right, so you can go all the way up to 9, and it's going to cost 800 for divine, 900 for arcane, and so on. So there's sage. So you can hire a sage. Simple questions, compound questions, complex questions, religious, prophetic issues, mystical, magic questions, and so you have different types of questions that you're asking the sage to look into, and it will have the quality or level of the question, then the time that it takes, the base cost of it, and any additional costs implied in that as well. Retaining adherents loyalty. So they have a system here that develops loyalty, right? And so an adherent's loyalty is ever, if ever relevant, is situational, as they can only be loyal to a party that circumstances have forced them to join. Transient adherents have no loyalty rating of which to speak. If they have joined the party due to circumstances, their loyalty to the character or characters is completely dependent upon the charisma of the main character and again, the circumstances. The character must make a successful charisma check in order to keep the adherent around. The check is adjusted by the challenge level of the situation as determined by the castle keeper, as well as the character's level and attribute bonuses. Morale checks. Morale is a combat-based roll, a charisma check. Normally, adherents have no morale, and the rules do not apply. But as with loyalty above, circumstances may dictate the adherent's morale is affected. The character must make a successful charisma check in order to keep the adherents around. The check is adjusted by the challenge level of the situation and determined by the castle keeper. The following table gives the castle keeper a set of simple situational guidelines and their respected challenge levels. So let's take a look at that. And it is very simple. Extreme certain death or imprisonment plus 10 to the challenge level. All right, so you're going to add plus 10 to the target number that the player character has to roll on the charisma check. It makes it much, much harder with a plus 10. If it's harsh or dangerous, a plus 5. If it's venturesome, could end well, could end poorly, it's flat roll, charisma check. Easy, little, or no risk, and some reward, it's going to be a -5 on the charisma check roll, which is a positive. So you want it to be as low a target number as necessary. So a base charisma check, let's say it's a 12, Well, now you only need to roll a 7 or higher on a d20 in order to be successful. And then finally, beneficial, no risk with certitude of great reward is a -10. So they're going to certainly be willing to help out, and to participate if they're certain that there is no risk and they are certain that there is great reward. Of course, they're going to. So there you have the entire section on, and I'll switch views here. There you have the entire section on just the most common interactions that a player party is going to have, and that is with adherents. Remember, adherents are either transitory, in other words, they're so in the background that they're not given more than just a name and a profession, or they are permanent adherents. These are individual NPCs that the player characters are going to interact with, either in an important one-time situational way or frequently over the course of time. And by putting all these things in and assigning a loyalty rating and doing morale checks with them and encouraging this level of interaction with NPCs that that based on the circumstances play an important role in what the player character's goals are, all right, is the level of social interaction that is being encouraged through this system. Uh, it's a it is a mechanical system. It's not very complex because it doesn't need to be complex, but you could always add levels of complexity with starting to implement where each of these NPCs might have their own goals involved. That's when you start really getting into more complex hirelings, and later on patrons or adversaries. And I will get into those in the next upcoming video. So then the next video is going to be on hirelings, and you're going to see that added layer of complexity. So a mechanical complexity of social interaction really does expand as you get to hirelings, and then later on in named NPCs, whether they be adversaries, they could be creatures, or they could be patrons that are directly assisting the player characters, or the player characters are actually getting quests on a regular basis from them as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please give it a thumbs up. Leave your question in the or comment in the section there. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. My channel is going to continue covering Castles and Crusades for the next couple of weeks, it seems, because there is so much in the Castle Keeper's Guide that I feel it's necessary to spend the time on Castles and Crusades in general, because it is, it has certainly become my go-to fantasy RPG, and I think that it really does compare very, very well, if not better than many of the other either OSR or mainstream fantasy role-playing games out there. I think that the comparison in the game system really holds this up above many of the others. Just my personal opinion, but I've been looking at a number of OSR games, and I own all of the mainstream ones as well. And I've been doing this for 40 plus years, so I will stack my opinion against others when it comes to saying, well, this is a really great system, and I don't think it can be argued that it's not in comparison to other systems. And perhaps at the end of this series of videos, specifically on NPCs, I will do a comparison between how NPCs are covered in Castles and Crusades and how they're covered in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. And I think when you see the comparison between the two side by side, you're going to see that the highly complex social interactions for the social interaction pillar of role playing is actually supported far greater here in Castles and Crusades than it is in comparison to 5th edition. And I will also compare it to Pathfinder if you're interested in seeing that as well, and we can see how all three systems kind of stack up along that. I think that it's strongly here in Castle Keeper's Guide and in Castles and Crusades as compared to the other two systems. So without further ado, have a great day. Look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. I have some other videos that will be working on intermixed with this continuation of the Castle Keeper's Guide. And as always, have fun out there, keep on gaming, stay safe as always, and I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. Take care.